My daughter-in-law texted me 9 words on Thanksgiving morning. Just immediate family this year, Harold. 4 hours later, she called me 11 times before noon. Nothing about me had changed in those 4 hours. I hadn't gotten smarter, richer, or easier to love. I'd just been standing next to a man in a photograph, and my son had finally looked him up. I want to tell you what actually happened, because I've read plenty of these stories where the old man's a saint and the kids are monsters, and that's not quite what this is. I was there too. I let it happen for a long time. My name is Harold Bishop. I'm 69 years old, and I live in the same brick, 2-story, in Maplewood, New Jersey, that my wife Colette and I bought in 1985 for less than a used pickup truck costs today. Colette passed 19 months before that Thanksgiving. Ovarian cancer, stage 4 by the time they caught it. 4 months from diagnosis to the last morning. I spent 34 years as a claims examiner for a regional insurance company, the kind of job nobody at a dinner party asks a follow-up question about. When a house fire looks a little too convenient, or a stolen boat turns up registered under a cousin's name in Delaware, somebody has to sit with the paperwork until the story either holds or falls apart. That was me. 3.5 decades of listening to people explain their losses. 3.5 decades getting very, very good at knowing when a number was lying to me. Hold on to that. It matters later, and it's going to make you want to put your fist through the screen. That Thanksgiving morning, I was standing in my kitchen with coffee I hadn't touched, staring at the chair on the left side of the table. That was Colette's chair. I hadn't moved it. I also hadn't managed to sit in it. For a year and a half, that chair had been the loudest object in my house. My phone lit up. Son Marcus. Hey, Dad. About today. I already knew that tone, the one a man uses right before he finishes deciding something he'd already decided an hour ago. Priya's parents are hosting this year, he said, and it's going to be small. Just immediate family. You understand. I stood there with the coffee halfway to my mouth. Immediate family. I turned that phrase over like it was a claim form with a bad signature on it. Immediate family. The man who taught him to drive stick in the parking lot behind the ShopRite on Route 22. The man who co-signed his first apartment lease, paid 3 years of tuition at Rutgers, and sat on a hospital floor holding his mother's hand while she stopped breathing now outside the perimeter. Administratively removed. Marcus, it's Thanksgiving, I said. I know, Dad, but Priya's dad really wants this to feel special for their side this year. The table only seats 10, and with her sister's kids, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. I was 53 when I married your grandmother, I wanted to say. I didn't argue, I want you to know that. I didn't beg, and I didn't tell him there was a 9-pound turkey already brining in my fridge. In Colette's dry rub, the one with smoked paprika and dark brown sugar, that I'd copied out of her recipe box on a Tuesday, and had to sit down for a minute before I could finish reading it. Understood completely, I said, and hung up. If you've ever said understood to somebody when what you meant was, you just told me exactly what I'm worth to you, and I heard you, you already know the exact temperature of that kitchen. It isn't sad exactly. It's cold and very clear, like standing inside a walk-in freezer. You can see everything. I stood there for 10 minutes, maybe 12. The refrigerator cycled on and off twice. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Reggie Okafor. I hadn't seen Reggie in person since Colette's funeral. Before that, maybe not since 2009. Walt, sorry. Force of habit. My late father-in-law was a Walt. Harold heard through the grapevine you might be on your own today. Don't be. My place, Short Hills, 1 o'clock. 18 people and enough food to embarrass a church potluck. Also, it'd be good to have somebody in the room who remembers when I almost failed accounting. Reggie and I were roommates at Rutgers in 1976. He was in his 5th year, about to flunk out of the business program because, no matter how hard he tried, a balance sheet made his eyes cross. I spent 3 weeks at a card table in our dorm room, walking him through debits and credits until it stuck. He passed with a C- and cried in the hallway. He bought 11 acres of failing orchard land in the Hudson Valley in 1987. Now, Okafor Orchard Cider is in every supermarket chain east of the Mississippi, and Reggie owns something like 600 acres and a piece of 2 other companies. Somebody told me once he'd been in a magazine. I never looked it up. I want you to hear that clearly, because it matters later. I genuinely never looked it up. I texted back, "Don't want to intrude." His reply came in under a minute. "You kept me in school. I own a company because of a card table. Get in the car, Harold." I went to shave, And the mirror in that bathroom showed me a man I honestly didn't recognize. 69 and grayer than I'd agreed to be. Shoulders carrying something I couldn't have named. But something turned over in my chest, standing there with the razor. For the first time in 19 months, I wasn't getting ready out of obligation. I was going somewhere I'd actually been asked to go. And that's when I did the thing I'd been avoiding for 28 months. I got my laptop, sat down at the kitchen table, and logged into my bank account. Now, you need to understand who's telling you this. I audited claims for 34 years. I could look at a damage photo and an inspection report and tell you in 4 minutes whether a roof actually failed in a storm or somebody took a hammer to it in the driveway. That was my entire professional life. And I had never once run the numbers on my own son. I'd kept a rough tally in my head. Everybody does. But a number in your head is subjective. It's got give in it. You can round down at 2 in the morning. A spreadsheet doesn't negotiate. February, 26 months earlier, 5 weeks after we buried Colette, $2,400. Marcus said Priya's mother needed a procedure insurance wouldn't fully cover. I sent it in under 10 minutes. 3 weeks later, she posted photos of a new sectional and an accent wall. There had been no procedure. There was never a procedure. May of that year, the transmission on their Pathfinder, he said, gave out at 60,000 miles, and he needed the car for work, 2 days from being stranded. I sent it. 5 weeks later, I saw that same Pathfinder idling outside a Wawa on Route 10, running fine. They'd been to Cancun by then. 19 photos. And on, every 3 or 4 months, like a season changing a roof, a dental thing, Priya's school fees, her mother's medication, always urgent, always with a deadline, always framed, so a 48-hour delay might collapse something. I typed it all into a spreadsheet. 28 months, 1 line at a time, date and amount, and the reason he gave me. Then I let it total. $64,150. I sat back in that chair and looked at that number for a long time. $64,000 in 28 months. That's more than $2,000 a month. That's more than most people in this state pay in rent. Gone. And then I did the last thing. This is the part that actually got me. I added a second column next to it. Every visit he'd made to my house in those same 28 months, 7 visits. Every single one fell within 2 weeks of a transfer. My hands were shaking when I closed that laptop, and it still wasn't anger. Anger came later. Anger, honestly, was a relief when it finally showed up. This was something worse. This was the specific, cold sickness of a professional realizing he'd been running a fraudulent claim for 2.5 years and approving it every single time, simply because the claimant had his wife's eyes. If you've ever refused to look at a number because you already knew what it would tell you, I'm not going to lecture you. I did the same thing for 28 months, and I did it with a degree in exactly that field. Knowing better has never stopped anybody. Loving someone makes you stupid in one very specific direction, and the people who love you know exactly which direction that is. I drove to Short Hills a little before 1. 25 minutes up 24, and the houses got progressively larger the closer I got. My Camry has 198,000 miles on it, and the rear bumper held steady. Reggie's address ended at a gate, an actual iron gate, with a camera and a call box. I pressed the button, heard a click, and Reggie's voice came through, sounding delighted. There he is. Come on up. The drive wound through old oaks and manicured lawn, and then the house came out from behind the trees, glass and stone, and long horizontal lines cut into the hillside, so the whole east side of it looked out over a valley going gold in the late fall light. I parked between a Rivian and a restored old Bronco. Reggie was out the front door before I even cut the engine. 71 fit, wearing a flannel shirt that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. He grabbed my hand and just pulled me in close. I want to tell you something honest. A man my age can go a long time without another human being touching him. In my case, it had been 19 months. My whole body didn't know how to respond. You look exactly the same, he said. He was lying. Still a terrible liar, though. Come meet everybody. Fair warning, Denise loves hugs, and she's waited 14 years to meet the man who saved my degree. The whole west wall was glass. 20 people, wine glasses, 3 conversations happening at once. Somebody's kid was asleep on a couch with a book on his chest. This wasn't a Thanksgiving dinner. It was a community. There's a difference, and you feel it in the first 4 seconds. Denise crossed the room and hugged me before she said a word. Harold Bishop. He talks about you constantly. The friend who wouldn't let him quit. I explained debits and credits, I said. That's all. You taught him failing at something isn't permanent, Reggie said, quieter. That's worth more than the accounting. Dinner was at a table for 20. I ended up between a woman who runs a physical therapy clinic in Millburn and a man who teaches landscape architecture at NYU. And here's what got me. They asked me questions. Real ones. Not the polite kind you ask an old man before turning back to the conversation. The physical therapist asked what I did for a living, and when I told her, she leaned forward and asked what the strangest claim I'd ever investigated was. So I told her about a warehouse fire in 1994 that turned out to be a very poorly disguised inventory clearance, and it took me 6 weeks to prove it, and she laughed so hard she had to set her glass down. In 19 months, nobody had asked me a question about myself. I want to be careful how I say this. My son asked me plenty of questions, but every question he'd asked me since his mother's funeral was a setup, a runway to a number. There's a specific loneliness in being handled gently by your own child during a conversation, and I'd gotten so used to it, I'd stopped noticing. After dinner, Reggie took me out to the back deck. The sun was going down behind us, the valley lighting up, and the sky had gone that pink color you only get in late November. Denise came out with her phone. Harold, stand next to him. The light's doing something ridiculous. I haven't been very photogenic lately, I said. You're a distinguished-looking man. Get over there. Reggie's arm went around my shoulders. I straightened up and tried to remember how a face makes a normal smile. She moved around us, finding angles, the whole valley behind her. Perfect, she said. You two look like you're celebrating something. Then she went back inside, and Reggie didn't say anything for a while. Then he said, Denise told me your boy shut you out today. I looked at the valley and said the number out loud for the first time in my life. $64,150 in 28 months, every one of them an emergency that never happened. Reggie didn't say anything. I kept talking. I said it because that's what a father does. Because after Colette, he was the last piece of what we'd built. My voice did something I'm not proud of. And this morning he told me I'm not immediate family. Reggie was quiet a long moment. Then he said, You want to show them what they've been throwing away? So show them. Post the picture. That's mean. It's precise. You're not lying about anything. You just need to stop hiding where you actually are. Sometimes the only answer to being treated like nothing is being visibly, undeniably fine. I got home around 9, and the house felt different walking in. Not empty exactly, quiet in a different way. I made tea. I sat in my chair. I found the photo. It was a good one. The two of us grinning like idiots from 1978. The whole valley and that pink sky behind us. The corner of a very expensive house in the frame. I opened Facebook. I typed slowly. Thanksgiving with old friends. Thank you, Reggie, for reminding me what family is supposed to feel like. Some people measure a relationship in years. The good ones measure it in who shows up. My thumb sat on the button for a while. I knew what I was doing. Let's not pretend otherwise. I knew Marcus would see it, and I knew exactly what he'd do, because I spent 34 years learning what people do when a number walks into the room. I pressed it. Then I turned the phone face down and drank my tea in the dark. 11 minutes. That's how long it took. When I flipped the phone over, the screen was solid with notifications. 29 texts, 4 voicemails, 11 missed calls. Priya had sent 9 of her own. I scrolled through Marcus's texts in order, and I want you to hear the progression, because it's a whole story by itself. Dad, where is this? Whose house is that? Is that Short Hills? Who's Reggie Okafor? Dad, I looked him up. Wait, that's him? You know him? He's worth like $80 million. Why did you never mention this? Dad, this is actually important. Call me. Dad, call me back. We need to talk about this seriously. In 9 hours, I'd gone from 13th priority at a 10-person table to extremely important. Priya was more direct, which I almost respected. Harold, where were you today? Marcus says you've known Reggie Okafor since college. Is that right? This changes things for the whole family. We should talk about your network. Those kinds of connections can really matter for the kid's future. I read all of it, then turned the phone completely off, went to bed, and slept better than I had in 8 months. Honestly, if I'd been 50 instead of 69, I'd have called him that same night and yelled until I lost my voice. Age doesn't make you wiser. It just wears you down enough that you stop biting the hook. From the outside, those two things look identical. 40 more notifications by morning. I made coffee, scrambled an egg, and listened to the voicemails, which got stranger as they went. The one from 2 a.m. was the last straw for me. Dad, it's me. Look, maybe we should sit down and talk about estate stuff. If you've got relationships at that level, there are things we should get organized as a family. Property stuff. He called at 8:40, and I let it ring 4 times. Dad, where have you been? Sleeping. That place, Reggie Okafor's place, that's real money. Why didn't you ever say anything? You never asked about my friends, Marcus. You asked about a lot of things. Never that. Silence. Then it turned hurt. That's not fair. Yesterday you weren't immediate family. This morning I'm important. Explain to me what changed between those 2 sentences. And if you can do it without a number, I'll listen to whatever you want to say. He couldn't. So he pivoted, the way people do. Priya cares about you. We're your family. We just need to understand your circle, especially people at that level. Significance. He actually used that word. I have to go. Wait, when can we meet? For coffee. Let's actually talk about planning, about the future, about making sure things are organized for everyone's benefit. I said I'd let him know, and I hung up. 6 calls Tuesday, 9 on Wednesday. Thursday morning, Priya's Subaru was in my driveway at 8:15, and I stood behind my living room curtain like a man dodging a process server, watching her knock twice, wait 11 minutes, and leave. That morning, I opened my laptop and typed, Estate Attorney, Morristown, New Jersey. I found Renata Volkov in a small office near the courthouse. 24 years in asset protection and family dynamics, which I've since learned is the polite professional way of saying exactly this. One review caught my eye. She made sure what I'd built went where it was valued, instead of where it was assumed. I called her. I need to restructure my estate, I said. I need to make sure my savings don't fund manipulation after I'm gone. There was a pause, then, warmly, I understand completely. I have an opening Monday at 3. Then I did what I always do. 34 years of claims files means my own records were spotless. I spread everything across the dining room table. Pension statements, brokerage, deed, life insurance, proof of every transfer. I highlighted. I cross-referenced. I lined up the Facebook posts against the bank transfer dates, side by side, exactly the way I'd have built a file for a carrier. Pension, $3,600 a month. Social Security, $2,300. Brokerage, $286,000. The house paid off since 2009, worth roughly $540,000. Life insurance, $250,000, a little over $1.1 million, enough to make a difference, enough to make somebody desperate. We met at a diner on South Orange Avenue the Monday before my appointment. I got there 15 minutes early and took the corner booth against the wall, sightline to both doors. An old habit from 34 years sitting across from people who were about to tell me a story. They came in at 10 past 10. Priya checked her face in a compact mirror by the door. Marcus straightened his collar twice. I watched my son get ready to perform for me. It's something I hope you never have to watch. Dad, you look good. You eating okay? Same as always. He ordered with 3 modifications. She got an oat milk latte with cinnamon. I had black coffee and waited, because whoever speaks first in a negotiation loses, and I spent 34 years never speaking first. He set his cup down carefully. Sunday. That was quite a place Reggie's got. We were pretty upset about the confusion around the plans. What confusion? You told me not to come. That was extremely clear. Priya leaned in, and her voice did that thing where concern and interrogation blur together. Harold, if we'd known you had other options, we'd have handled it differently. And there it is, right there. She didn't hear what she said, and it was the truest sentence spoken at that table. You didn't ask if I had other options, I said. You assumed I had no plans at all. Those are different, and one of them tells me exactly what I've been to you. Marcus changed lanes. How well do you actually know him? Like, do you two talk regularly? Or was Sunday a one-off? He called because he heard I'd be alone. How'd you hear that? Fast, sharp. People who actually care about me notice when something's wrong. That's how it works. The silence stretched long enough to get uncomfortable for both of them. Dad, this isn't fair, he said, in the exact tone he'd perfected at 15. Fair, I said, setting my cup down. Let's be fair. Since February, 26 months ago, I've given you $64,000 $150. Priya's face went red in blotches starting at her neck. Every one of them an emergency. The procedure that never happened. The transmission that never failed. The winter coats that turned into a sectional sofa. I have the dates. I have the amounts. And I have your texts. And I have the photographs you posted within 3 weeks of every transfer. I laid it all out. 34 years. Marcus. That was my job. Determining whether a claim was true. He didn't deny it. That's what I noticed. He didn't say it's not true. He said we needed help. That's what family does. Help is temporary support during a real hardship. What we've been doing has another name, and you know what it is. That's a terrible thing to say to your own son. And then he said something that stopped me cold, and I have to admit it because it was true, and I've thought about it every day since. His jaw was tight and his eyes were wet. You want to know when this actually started? It started about 8 weeks after Mom's funeral. You stopped talking to me, Dad. You went into that house and you closed the door, and you didn't call me for almost a year. I lost her too. And the one time you'd pick up fast, the one time you'd show up the same day, was when I needed money. He was shaking. So yeah, I kept asking, because it was the only thing that still worked. Nobody said anything, and I want to stop the story here, because this is the part where I stop being the hero. He was right about that. Not about the 64,000, not about the lies, not about Cancun, none of that, but about the silence. He had every right to that part. I fell into a hole after Colette died, and I stayed there, and my own grief was so loud in my own ears that I genuinely didn't hear my son on the outside of it. I thought I was surviving. From where he stood, I had left. 2 things can be true at the same time. He turned me into a bank, and I gave him a reason to look for a door, any door, because I'd closed the only one he knew. Understanding a person doesn't erase what they did, but it means you can't tell the story with a clean conscience, and I won't. You're right about that year, I said. I'm sorry for it. I'll be sorry for it as long as I live, and that doesn't entitle you to my retirement. He stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. This is about your rich friend. This is about a spreadsheet. And there it was. 9 seconds after getting caught. Straight to the kids. Great. Don't expect us to keep bringing them around here then. I'll see them when they're old enough to understand what leverage is and choose for themselves. I said I put exact change on the table for my coffee, not a cent more. I have an appointment at 3. For what? I was standing now. Personal business. Enjoy the latte. Renata's office was on the 9th floor, a view of the courthouse and the tree line beyond it. She went through my file, and I watched a professional recognize a pattern. You want to disinherit him completely? No, I said, surprised at how fast I answered. He's still my son. I'm not doing that. Then we limit access, not affection. A testamentary trust, controlled distributions, no lump sum that evaporates in 6 months. And the remainder goes to charity, which, given what you've shown me, also proves this was a considered plan, not an impulse. I thought about it for maybe 4 seconds, because I'd been thinking about it for 2 years without admitting it. 70% split 2 ways. Half to a foundation that funds trade apprenticeships for kids aging out of foster care, because my own father came up through a program like that. And since I never believed a 4-year degree was the only door, the other half to the land trust that maintains the county nature preserve, the one Colette walked every Sunday for 22 years, and where I still can't get past the dogwoods without stopping. 30% to Marcus, through the trust, distributions starting at 55. No lump sum, no acceleration, no loans against it. Can he contest it? He can file. He'll lose. You're a professional with a 34-year career in claims analysis, in full possession of your faculties, with records that would embarrass most attorneys. She almost smiled. You're the least vulnerable senior I've ever had in this chair. $3,800. I wrote the check without hesitating. I've spent more than that on a water heater. The following Thursday, the doorbell rang. Marcus's Highlander, Priya in the passenger seat, and both kids climbing out of the back before I could decide anything. The door opened. He still had a key. I never asked for it back. My granddaughter Nia ran into the living room and hit my leg so hard I nearly went over. My grandson Desmond came slower, 10 years old and already getting too big for hugging, but his hug was real, and he held on a second longer than he meant to. I hadn't seen them in 4 months, and for 20 minutes I forgot everything. Desmond had built a model of a steam locomotive out of balsa wood, the kind with gears that actually turned on the old logging railways, and he'd gotten the trucks right, and I nearly came apart. Nia paged through a folder of drawings, narrating every single one in detail. Their love was pure. It was the only pure thing in the room. But Marcus and Priya didn't sit down. They stood near the entryway in their coats, waiting. "Dad," he said casually, and that's how I knew. "So, we're looking at houses. There's one in Chatham, great neighborhood. Kids could walk everywhere." I kept gluing the loose plate back onto Desmond's boxcar. "Sounds like you've already decided. Basically, we're just short on the down payment. It's 7 to 10. And they want 20%. A pause. "That's 142,000. My hands stopped. Nia looked at me, confused. Because a 7-year-old can feel the temperature change in a room, even without a name for it. "It's a lot of money, Marcus. But it's for your grandkids' future, right?" My son's voice, sweet as honey. Desmond could get into the advanced track. Nia could walk to school. "Your current place has 3 bedrooms, a fenced yard, and a school 2 blocks away. Adequate isn't the same as good, Dad. Don't you want something better for them?" Desmond's smile disappeared. He was watching his father, 10 years old, already learning to read people like a claims examiner. "This isn't an emergency," I said. "It's an upgrade. And you brought my grandkids into my house and put them in the middle of it." Marcus was already steering them toward the door. "Come on. Grandpa needs to think about what matters." "I know exactly what matters. This is it, the problem." Marcus stepped closer, his voice dropping, and I'd like to say it sounded like a threat, but honestly it sounded more like panic. "Don't expect to see them if you're going to reject your own family." "You mean, don't expect to see them if I don't pay for access?" I didn't raise my voice. "Understood." Nia twisted in her mother's arms, reaching for me. "Grandpa, why are we leaving?" I couldn't answer. I've replayed that 100 times, and I still can't. Desmond left the locomotive on my coffee table. Nia dropped a drawing on the sidewalk, and I picked it up, carried it out, and handed it through the car window, and our eyes met, and she didn't understand. Then they were gone, and I stood in my driveway in Maplewood until the street went quiet. I went inside and fixed the loose plate on that locomotive. Took me half an hour. Then I set it on the shelf by the door, where I'd see it every night, one day, because I decided I didn't want to be a man who hides the hard parts in a drawer. I signed on the 14th of December. Reggie and Denise came downtown to witness it. They're not beneficiaries, and that's exactly why I asked them. Renata spread the documents across the conference table in stacks. "Mr. Bishop, you understand this document supersedes all prior ones?" "Completely. And you're doing this free of coercion or undue influence?" I sat with that question a long moment. This is the first fully free decision I've made about my own money since my wife died. I signed each page separately, slowly, and I'll tell you how it felt. It felt like the day we signed for the house, back in 1985. The same weight in the pen, a man putting his name on something that actually belonged to him. The notary stamped it. Reggie put a hand on my shoulder. "Proud of you, brother. I had to look at the tree line for a second." That night I called Marcus and asked him to come by, Tuesday morning, 10 o'clock, my house. "About what?" "About my estate. You should hear it from me." "Dad, are you sick? Is that it?" "No. Tuesday." I arranged the living room on purpose. 2 chairs facing mine, 4 feet of open space between a manila folder and the coffee table. They arrived at 9:58, which told me everything the first time in 3 years he'd been early for anything. They sat down. Nobody offered coffee. Nobody took off a coat. I slid the folder across. "I've restructured my estate. Read it." He opened it, and I watched my son read. I want to tell you it slowly, because those were the longest 12 minutes of my life, and I owe you every second of them. The furnace kicked on. That's the first thing I remember. That low sound old houses make. Priya sat with her purse still on her shoulder, which I noticed and have thought about since, because she never set it down once the whole time, like a woman who'd already decided how this would end. Marcus turned the first page. His eyes moved left to right, stopped, went back to the top, repeated the motion. The second page had the percentages on it. His jaw moved without him speaking, just that small motion men make, trying to keep their face still. His thumb went white where it pressed the paper. 30%, he said, not asking. He was reading it aloud to make it real, the way people do when they get a diagnosis. To 2 organizations, Foster Youth Trade Scholarships and the County Preserve. The Preserve, he looked up. Dad, the Preserve. Mom walked there every Sunday for 22 years. You've been there. You threw up in the parking lot when you were 9. He looked back down, moving to the trust language. I watched him find the age. 55, he said. Distributions start at 55. No lump sum, no acceleration, no loans against the principal. I'm 34. I'm aware. Dad. Priya reached over, took the pages from his hands, and read them herself. Fast. The way you skim a bank statement you already know is wrong. Then she made a small sound through her nose. Just one. This is what she wanted, isn't it? She said it as a statement. That lawyer did exactly what I figured. You've got a friend worth $80 million and now, suddenly, I've got a spreadsheet. Priya, you didn't put a single cent of this in my head, I said. Your husband put every cent of it in my bank statement. Marcus stood up, sat back down, stood up again, and that's what I keep seeing, that he couldn't decide what his body should do. You're punishing me, he said. No, if I were punishing you, you'd have zero. You don't have zero. You have $130,000 structured so it still exists when you're 60. This isn't punishment. It's the most loving thing I know how to do for a man who currently can't hold on to money. You're humiliating me. You brought my grandkids into this house and used them as collateral for a mortgage. And he came apart, suddenly, without warning. His face just gave way, and he sat down hard, and my son, who is 34 years old, put both hands over his eyes. Now, here's the part nobody tells you about, and it's exactly why I'm telling you this story. I almost went back on it. I was sitting 4 feet from my son, crying, the papers on the table between us, and every cell in my body wanted to get up, put a hand on his head, and say, forget it, it's yours, all of it. Just don't cry in my living room. That urge was strong. It was physical. It was in my legs. That urge is not love. I had to learn that at 69. That urge is a reflex. And a reflex is exactly what he'd been running on for 28 months. I didn't move. Priya stood, and her voice went cold and flat. And I'll say this with total honesty, my mother was evicted twice. Twice. I was 9 the first time, and we put everything out on the curb on Ferris Street. She was firm about it, so don't sit there acting like wanting security is some character flaw. Some of us can't be relaxed about money, and God help me, I understood her completely. She wasn't lying about any of it, and it explained a lot. I believe you, I said, and I'm sorry that happened to you. But you didn't build security. You built a pipeline, and when it ran dry for one afternoon, I got told there wasn't a chair for me. They left. The folder stayed on my coffee table because they were too angry to take it. The door closed. I heard the car start. I heard it pull away. And I sat in my chair, in my quiet house, and I did not feel triumphant. I want to be honest with you about that. There's a version of this story where the old man feels great, and that's a lie people tell to feel avenged. I felt like a man who'd just amputated something to save the rest. I put the folder in my drawer and left it. He tried twice more that month. I let the calls go to voicemail. Then things went quiet. And here's the part that surprised me. Quiet turned out to be different from empty. I'd confused those two things for a year and a half. Reggie's crowd took me in for Christmas. 22 people I barely knew treated me with more warmth in one afternoon than I'd gotten in 19 months from the only family I had left. Then in March, an email subject line, sorry, almost deleted this. My thumb was on top of it. Dad, I've had 5 months to think. You were right about the money, and I stopped arguing about it in my head because there's nothing to argue. I'd convinced myself for a long time that it was already mine, and I was just getting it early. That's what I actually believed. Writing it down, it sounds insane. I turned you into an account, and I stopped seeing you around the time Mom died. I'm not asking for anything attached to this. That's the one thing I can offer that actually matters. If you want to try again with no money involved, I'd like that. If not, I understand. Marcus. I read it 3 times. Then I called him. Dad, you didn't ask for anything. No, that's new. We started with coffee once a month, then twice. He asked about my life. The first time he did it, he really did it. No runway, no number at the end. Afterward, I sat in my car in the parking lot for 10 minutes. He's still doing all right for himself. This isn't a movie, it's the real deal. In April, Reggie called and asked if I'd want to volunteer at the County Rail Heritage Museum, restoring old logging equipment and running the Saturday program for veterans. 34 years working claims, and I'd never actually put my hands on a locomotive. I said yes. The volunteer coordinator was a woman named Elaine Petrosky, 65, who'd run the county library system for 26 years, widowed 3 years, no kids. She had a way of explaining things to strangers that never once made anybody feel stupid, which is the rarest skill in the world. We started getting coffee after Saturday shifts, not dating exactly, just talking about loss, about the strange country you find yourself in past 60, when the map you'd been using turns out to be of somewhere else entirely. In May, she asked, carefully, about my son. Slow, I said, but real. He doesn't ask for anything anymore. That's the test, and he's passing it. It takes something from both of us. I'm learning that protecting yourself doesn't mean you can't forgive, I said. It means you forgive with offense. In June, I adopted a dog. An 11-year-old wire-haired mutt named Chester, gray around the muzzle, who'd been at the shelter 14 months because everybody wants a puppy. I crouched down and he looked at me with an expression I recognized in the mirror every morning. Hey, old man, I said. I know what it's like when people decide you're done. He sleeps at my feet every night now. And in September, a letter came. Actual paper. Marcus's handwriting. Dad Desmond starts 6th grade next month. Nia's asking about you. Not because we're pushing it. If you're open to it, we'd like to bring them by. No agenda. No commitment. You decide. I called Elaine and told her I didn't know if I was ready. What does your gut say? That I've built walls. They were necessary. Maybe it's time to build a door too, she said. Keep the walls. Just make people knock. They came on a Saturday. Nia hit my knees. Desmond looked at the shelf by the door, saw the locomotive with the plate glued back on, went very quiet, and said, You fixed it. I fix things, I said. That's the job. 3 hours in the backyard. Chester let Nia put a hat on him. Marcus and Priya hung back and let the kids lead. And Priya, to her credit, told me one honest thing at the door. I don't agree with what you did, but I understand why you did it. That's more than most people manage. So here's what all of this taught me, and I'll say it plainly because you've been generous with your time. The mistake most of us make is treating family like a category instead of a behavior. We think it's a noun. It's a verb. It's who shows up on a Tuesday afternoon when there's nothing in it for them. And if you're honest about the accounting, the results won't match the chart you were handed at birth. And here's the harder part. The part I learned the ugly way. Money is never the actual problem. It's just the substance the problem shows up wearing. My son didn't come after my savings because he loved money. He reached for it because it was the last channel of communication left between us after I went silent inside my own grief. I built that silence. He built the connection through it. We're not equally at fault, but neither of us is innocent. And any version of this story where I come out clean is one I'd be telling myself for comfort. Here's something you can do tonight, and it doesn't cost you anything but 40 minutes. Pull up your bank statements and add up a recurring amount you've been rounding down in your head not to catch anybody, just to know. Because a number in your head is negotiable, and a number on paper is a fact, and you can't make a good decision about a fact you're too scared to face. I lost $64,000 over an amount I was too afraid to add up. And here's the question I'd like you to sit with tonight, once the house goes quiet. In your closest relationship, when's the last time that person reached out needing absolutely nothing? Not what they'd say if you asked them the exact date, but the real answer. I'd genuinely like to hear it. Comment 1 if you think I was right to post that photo and restructure the whole estate. Comment 2 if you think I should have handled it privately. No photo, no paperwork. Comment 3 if you think I went too far, that a father shouldn't put his own son into a trust no matter what he did. There's no wrong answer, and I promise the split will surprise you. And since you've stuck with me this far, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. Somebody's at the kitchen table. Somebody's on the night shift. Somebody's up at 2 a.m. when they should be asleep. I read every comment. It genuinely helps an old man to know the room isn't empty.